The United States ordered the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas, to shut down in just 3 days' notice, saying it was a hub for industrial and other espionage. Well, not surprisingly, China fired back, ordering the U.S. consulate in the Chinese city of Chengdu, that's actually in the region of Tibet, well, they were ordered to shut down in 72 hours as well, ending a 35-year tenure in that city. Joining us now to talk about what this battle of the consulates means is Joshua Philipp, the senior investigative reporter at the Epoch Times. Joshua, nice to see you again.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. My instinct is that this is a good thing. Let's have it out. Let's stop with the fake diplomacy that everything's all right. I believe we are in a Cold War with Communist China, and let people know that. Let people see that. Let's get rid of the niceties. Let's pack up all the consulates, maybe keep some diplomats around for some emergency communications. But I think it's more honest for both sides to send the nice talkers home. What do you think?
Fully agreed. The Chinese Communist Party, in its own doctrine and its own words, has been waging full-scale, unconventional war, not just on the United States, but on many countries. And it uses not just its consulates in the United States as tools for espionage, but even subverts American consulates in other countries. One of the big issues that hasn't really been mentioned in this whole debate, actually, is that the United States, in its consulates, hires local staff. I actually interviewed before Robert Booth. He's the former deputy director of the State Department's Office on Counterintelligence. He helped educate them on how to deal with foreign spies. He was saying most of the foreign staff they hire are spies. And so the CCP not only uses U.S. consulates, its consulates here in the U.S. as spy hubs, it uses American consulates in other countries as spy hubs.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we know in Canada that Chinese espionage is a huge risk. It's been over a decade since our spy counter-spy agency, CSIS, reported 1,000 Chinese agents at work. The number is surely larger since then. Even personally, when I had my book launch a week ago about my book that criticizes China, the Chinese consulate in Calgary, Alberta, whipped up an attempt to deplatform me. So I think that the Chinese consulates and embassies are extremely active throughout America and Canada. How do you think that this will unfurl? Like there's a reciprocity. America kicked the Chinese out of Houston. China kicks the Americans out of Chengdu. That's the panda bear capital. Will this go another round, or is it the tit-for-tat shooting war over? Do you think Secretary of State Mike Pompeo or even Donald Trump wants another round of this, or do you think they're in a stalemate for now?
Well, there are a few different factors on this. Just as a brief answer, yes, I do think this is going to continue, because as we speak, this is the Chinese Communist Party's new way of doing things. They call it wolf warrior diplomacy. They meet like with like. They will do the exact same thing you do to them, right back at you. I think the CCP's biggest concern is that the U.S. will pull out more consulates out of the U.S. from China, and that other countries may follow suit. And as you mentioned, the same thing happening in the U.S. is happening in Canada. As you mentioned, in Canada, this was exposed by CSIS. Actually, the Sidewinder report on this many years back really did a lot to expose the way the Chinese Communist Party was subverting your political system. And I think, unfortunately, that didn't have as big of an impact then as it would now if it came out, mainly because I think it was such a new topic for people. People had never heard anything like it. And of course, it was criticized as being racist and all these other labels they use against things like that. But, point is here, the CCP does the exact same things in every country. And if the U.S. takes that first step to start kicking them out, very likely Canada is going to follow suit. Very likely maybe even Australia is going to follow suit. Other countries may be on the tail of that as well.
Well, it's interesting that you say Canada might follow suit. I certainly wish that were the case. Given the fact that 2 Canadian nationals have been held hostage in China, I'd have to check the calendar. I think it's almost exactly 600 days. You would think that would be a provocation for which Canada would send diplomats home. Trudeau has not done so. Trudeau, in fact, has sent more foreign aid to China, including, bizarrely, to the Wuhan Virology Institute. Do you just hope that Canada would follow suit, or do you have any basis for that? I'm worried that that's wishful thinking. I think Canada is still very much in the thrall of China. And if you were to say UK or Australia or New Zealand, I'd say, okay, yeah, now you're talking. Why do you think Canada would follow suit?
I think I agree with you. The government in Canada has been pretty close to the CCP, but at the same time, the security community and the military in Canada is pretty on the ball with this stuff. I mean, really, among all the different countries in the world, they were some of the first to blow the whistle about the CCP infiltrating your political system. It's true, to really make that happen, you would probably need to have a cleaning out of those influences from your political system. And whether or not that's going to happen, we'll have to see. But when it comes to, for example, going against the Confucius Institutes, when it comes to calling out some of the different forms of subversion in Canada from the CCP, Canada has been pretty much at the forefront of exposing a lot of these things. Now, when it comes to these two Canadian nationals being held basically hostage in China in exchange really for Meng Wanzhou, because they said they'd do a hostage exchange for her. I mean, this is terrorist level stuff. They're threatening to execute two Canadian citizens because, this criminal CFO of Huawei, accused criminal, I should say, of Huawei, was arrested in Canada and may be extradited to the United States. At the same time, though, we're seeing across the board, Canada, UK, Australia, Five Eyes countries essentially, but even the EU joining in now, there is a lot of pushback against the CCP because they're seeing the CCP as hostile. They're seeing that this decades of soft power campaigns that it was launching, that really created this, polished facade. That facade has now fallen off, and people are starting to see it for what it is. It is unfortunately true, though, what you said with Trudeau, that he does seem to be leaning more towards China.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.